Greetings, everyone. I'm Joseph Atick, Executive Chairman of ID for Africa, and I would like to welcome you to this livecast. This is the episode where we launch a new series called Country Progress Reports, where we spotlight the identity ecosystem of a given country from A to Z. We will see how the identity stakeholders work together. We will survey their capacities and assets. We will discuss their strategies for total coverage and how they harmonize among themselves, what their plans are for developing the identity infrastructure to support the digital economy and to deliver services that meet their population's needs for at least the next decade. The dialogue will be transparent and intense with the objective of extracting lessons learned and nuggets of wisdom that can benefit ID development in other African countries and even in other regions of the world. If you're watching this in replay on YouTube, please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the great content we will be putting out. Of course, it is best to attend live so you can be the first to know and can participate in the chats, Q&A, and in the Community Voices segment. But we put out the replay as an added convenience for those who cannot attend and as part of our commitment to enriching digital public goods and to create a library of knowledge focused on ID4D that can be consulted and used for capacity building and strategic planning at all times. Today, we have an amazing panel. I'd like to thank Nigeria for agreeing to be the first in this series and for the transparency that they bring to this discussion. Please help me welcome and thank all of the panelists and their institutions for taking the time to be with us for this milestone event. Never ever has there been a public forum where 10 identity stakeholders from one single country are reunited to discuss identity. You can quote me on this. It has never been done anywhere. Glad to see once more Africa being first. Operator, could we bring the panel just for a welcome statement? Panelists, could you please turn on your video? Greetings, everybody. Just so we introduce one by one, we have with us DG Aziz from NIMC. Hello, DG Aziz. We have Grace Usoro from PENCOM. We have Hadija Dagabana from NIMC. We have Musa Jimoh from CBN, from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Hello. We have Adegoke from Paradigm Initiative, representing civil society. We have Premier Oiwoh from NIBSS. We have Adaku Obodo from National Population Register, Mrs. Obodo. We have Nasiru Ikharo from the National Health Insurance Scheme. We're supposed to have also with us Chidi Nwafor from INEC, and also Mr. Muhammad Adamu from the from Nigeria Immigration Services. I think we will continue to try to bring them on board. I think there has been a small technical problem, but I believe they will be able to join. We are running this panel constructively. We start with an in-conversation piece between DJ Aziz and myself. Then we will start adding different members of the identity ecosystem until we reach a point where we bring in a group discussion. So at this point in time, I'd like to ask just DJ Aziz to stay with me on the panel while everyone else, I see Chidi Nwafor is here, and I see Chidi, if you're with us, welcome, and we'll be coming back to you later in the program. So we'll come back. Okay, DJ Aziz, thank you once again for taking the time. I know you're very busy with what's happening right now in Nigeria, and I'd like to start by actually recognizing Nigeria's efforts and contribution to the cause of African identity and the ID for Africa movement. You've been a member of this movement since inception. You've hosted us in 2018. In 2019, you were the first country to declare Identity Day. Then you and Hadija have been tirelessly working as ambassadors and deputy ambassadors for the movement. So I really, on behalf of the movement, we sincerely thank you and thank Nigeria and the Nigerian institutions for all what you have done. So once again, welcome.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
I want to start with something very quickly. You remember in our discussions in past events, we talked about the idea of the importance of the political will as the first step towards establishing a successful identity program. So could you please share with our viewers, where is the political will right now in Nigeria regarding identity?
Well, thank you very much. Well, the political will sits at the top, very top, with our dear President Muhammadu Buhari. And because he has approved the development of this ID ecosystem to get to the highest level, at the highest stage. So far, he has approved the establishment of 3 institutional arrangements, such as the Project Steering Committee, which is the highest governing board with oversight and overall project guidance and direction. He has also approved the Ecosystem Strategic Unit responsible for coordination and communication of the steering committee's guidance to the ecosystem partners. He has also approved a project implementation unit responsible for the day-to-day operations that is warehoused in NIMC. There are also other bodies that has been approved, such as to fast-track the implementation, which includes the Legal Reform Working Group, because one of the aspects is that there are so many laws that are conflicting with each other. And also there's a technical working group to do all these things. So all these achievements are recorded, and so much that have been done over the years. You can say that the political leadership rests with the president, and he has given all the his lieutenants to follow up. And right now there is a lot of goodwill and also convergence of all the sectors onto the identity ecosystem platform.
Excellent, excellent. We're going to come back to the legal framework in a minute, but I think this merits congratulations, because I think getting the political will from the top, which is the president, to the ministers, to the deputy directors and deputy ministers and all the directors, I think that's clearly an accomplishment, and it's very important, especially in the context of a national strategy, which is the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy for a Digital Nigeria. We'll come back to that in a second. But I want to ask you a question. A few weeks ago, the president approved the transfer of NIMC, which used to be a commission, to become part of the ICT ministry, from a commission to being an agency in a ministry. Can you explain that move and what's the impact on NIMC and its partners of that move?
Well, the move is part of government reorganization at any time T, but the belief is that every government is made up of many agencies. Before when we were set up, we are still a commission, and we were set up and we are in the presidency. Just like in India too, when it started, it's in the presidency. Then it has been moved to the Ministry of Electronics and ICT. So right now, the idea is that we have decided, even before the COVID, that we need to move to a digital economy. And our Ministry of Communication was renamed to be added with the digital economy. And part of the policy is that it should have the foundation, that it should have identity to really drive this digital economy. recently the Honorable Minister says that for the digital economy to thrive, you need 4 things. First of all, you need a digital mobile phone. Secondly, you need a virtual account. Thirdly, you need a broadband to infrastructure. And finally, he says that you need the foundation, which is the digital identity to drive this digital economy. So moving us to that ministry is to make sure that we refocus Nigeria's economy to that digital economy and to give it a proper foundation to move forward. So we have many agencies, one government, and everything will just move smoothly.
So it's basically an elevation of the recognition of the important role digital identity plays in a national strategy.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. What about, you had a board. What will happen to that board of advisors? Will it continue to exist with all the stakeholders, or it will be replaced by some other committee that we can talk about later?
Well, so far everything will remain the way it is. Every commission has a board, and that board is just that it has been moved from presidency to now to be under the ministry. And so many other parastatals under ministries also have their own board, and they continue to exist the way they are.
So you will continue to be governed by a board, even though you report to the ministry?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's very clear. One thing that was striking in the recent past about the announcements that have been coming was what people would perceive as a shift in strategy. We no longer talk about an identity card. We talk about the NIN. We talk about the digital identity for life. We talk about your NIN is your identity for life. Can you speak a little bit about that shift, and how do you see that playing out in the short term, medium term, and long term?
Well, all along, we've been talking about the shift to the digital identity. Remember, the strategic roadmap was developed in 2017, which was approved in 2018 by the Federal Executive Council, and there it was stated that it's better because of the 21st century, that it is the number that is the most important aspect. Therefore, we should focus more on the number. The credentials, like cards, are more for convenience, and therefore they will remain for convenience, because for so long, we have been focusing on the cards and we have not enrolled enough people. And usually when you have a complex problem, you break it into pieces. So we said the focus should be on that number, because even in the US too is social security number. And for developing countries, India have shown us the way, whereby they enroll more than 1.3 billion people and issued them only the number. Therefore, that is the direction. That does not say that card is removed, no, but the focus should be on the number, because we are in 21st century.
Now, do you see at any point in time, and at what point in time, do you see an EID, a smart ID card, being available to the population in Nigeria? Right now, you're focusing on enrolling the population. Do you see at some point bringing in programs that give people a smart ID card?
Yeah, even this morning I was talking to someone, and the person told me that his grandmother in the village will not understand the digital number, because she's used to card. When she goes to the hospital, she's given a card that she has to utilize. So that he's telling me that card is still very, very much important. But we believe that if we enroll everyone else, you understand, the card will also be very easy. So we think that the card will also come in, but let us remove the inertia of capturing everybody. The banks, the private sector can also issue cards, which may be general multipurpose card, because that is all the difference between the card and other cards. So let's private sector come in and then let the card also, the cost also be reduced in such a way that, and also people can also use their mobile apps too as mobile identities. We believe that is a choice, but for the general public in Nigeria is that they need the card. And we think that the card will also remain, but let us focus and make sure that everyone is enrolled. That is the most important aspect.
Yeah, I mean that last week we discussed the most important challenge in Africa, and we said it was really the inclusion. It was really bringing in the people into these registers, into these unique identity numbers, digital identity numbers. And so it's a big challenge. And of course, earlier this year, the World Bank has signed with you a new project, which is Digital Identity for Development in Nigeria. And it's precisely in order to support the enrollment, plus other things we'll talk about, but in order to support the enrollment of a significant number of the population. Now, when issuing them in NIN, let's take that point further. Today, how many people have been issued in NIN?
Well, so far, we have more than 42 million Nigerians that are issued with unique IDs as of today. And that number have been growing. And we believe that because we are also a big country, and now that we have all the other stakeholders in place, even on this panel, we have the banks, we have the pensioners, we have the telcos. So we believe that we should be in the near future, we will be, that number will just increase. Right now we enroll approximately 500,000 in a month, which we believe that number will change to like 5 million or even more every month, in such a way that the next two years we should be able to enroll everyone.
Now, let's talk about the targets, if I may. I mean, which is public data, public information. The World Bank project has given a target by 2024 that you would have issued, including what you have already, 148 million NINs. So you've got about 3 years to basically issue what would be a little bit more than 100 NINs. Is that correct?
No, we believe that the 148 is additional to what we have.
148 is additional.
Additional to what we have, because so far we are more than 200 million. And mind you, again, we are also growing at a faster rate also.
Right.
So there will be additional people. So we believe, because all the other panelists that are here are part and parcel of this ecosystem, there's also an understanding of what this ecosystem, and also it is a performance-based system which will be paid for. Therefore, with that understanding, as I said, if we increase the rate from 0.5 million per month to about 5 million per month, then in no time, we should be able to break this 2024. By 2023, we should be able to capture the whole population.
Okay, I'm very excited about this, and I believe in heroism. I mean, but I'm struck by the task ahead, which is, in addition to this being 148 million additional, they're talking about enrolling 65 million women and girls, and 50 million under the age of 16. And these are today sectors that have not really interacted with the government agencies. What makes you believe that this is doable? And how are we going to do the model of the inclusion model?
Well, if you place the data that we have already captured now onto the population and segment them in the age categories, you'll see that with 24 years and below, which is more than 50% of the population, are actually in the school, in the primary school, secondary, and universities. And with the education sector also fully involved, we believe that and also private sector that are involved, they will be looking at where opportunities are, and they will target those places. And because they are already clusters, when you go to a school, you already have the people clustered in one place, and we should be able to fast track this aspect.
So you don't feel you need a new value rhetoric? I mean, telling the population why should they enroll? I mean, or will it be a requirement? If you want to be in the school, you must have this requirement. Is that, how's your value rhetoric going?
Well, it is a requirement, but what we are saying is that for these 2-3 years, let us go out and capture everyone, and enforcement will come naturally when you have more than half the population are enrolled. Then it will become naturally, and if we are working as an ecosystem, then every citizen, one way or the other, must go to one of these functional agencies, and those functional agencies will be able to enroll the person even if he doesn't have the need. So that will fast track the activities, will also obviate telling people. But publicity and communication is one of the aspect of the component on project management and stakeholder engagement. Right. Of the project, is to make sure that everybody is aware, because as we speak now, there are many people that do not even aware that we are.
Yeah, but I mean, basically, we are going to talk to the functional agencies to see what segments of the population they're handling. I'm worried about a segment, which are the poor and the vulnerable, and maybe the people who have special needs. Yeah. How do we reach out to them? Do we need to create a social safety net in Nigeria in order to capture those people? Or do you feel the functional agencies today, with their current projects and programs, can capture them?
Well, already there's, as you know, that we have social safety net. We also have even a ministry of the humanitarian that is in charge of these activities. They already also have some form of databases, but they are not linked with the NIN. And also from the Honorable Minister's speech, he says that we will commence by capturing the IDPs, because they are the most vulnerable group that we have, and therefore we already have a program for them to target that. And all these have to do with the inclusiveness and also making it robust. Therefore, the presidential directive is that we should go to the rural places, because most of us in the towns, the mainstream people, are the ones that have multiple of form of identities, but right. The people, the vulnerable people, are in the villages, and we believe that those mainstream people are already in our existing databases of the banking sector. So therefore, this ecosystem actually is focusing on going to the vulnerable people, so that we should have this inclusiveness. That is the presidential directive.
Right. So going beyond the one who are already having the access, because they're already known by the functional agencies. Okay, so that's really the most important aspect of your strategy, is that reaching to those who you have not touched before, to bring them into the system. Let me ask you another question. You've been quoted in the media, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but the media quoted you as saying that to give everybody into a digital identification number, it will cost, with the infrastructure and everything around it, $2.3 billion. The World Bank is giving, the loan is 430 million. How do you see the rest coming from? What is your business model? What's your revenue model? And where will you be able to scale the funds necessary to bring everybody into the ecosystem?
Well, no, I think the figures are wrong. What I said and what is in the strategic roadmap is that the 2.3 billion will involve also issuing general multipurpose card, and also working the way we are now, that is capturing a lot of data at the same time. That is what is going to cost that. But we have already passed that. We had 4 scenarios, and we selected the scenario that cost us the $433 million. And that is the one that we are implementing. So
okay.
it obviates only NIMC capturing data, and also it obviates us issuing the smart card. So we will only issue the digital identity, and it's going to cost us $433 million according to the strategic roadmap. And that is what we are still working on.
And so you're with the strategic roadmap where you're focusing on a very reduced set of identifiers just to identify people and just to issue them in. You feel you've got the financial resources to cover the entire population?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That is
now,
what World Bank, the AFD, and then the EU are sponsoring. Yes.
Right. Now, what's your sustainability model? Will you be charging for authentication services? How do you keep NIMC going forward? You got that funding, but beyond that, what is your sustainability model?
Well, the sustainability model is to charge a little fee, you understand, on the verification aspect, and that is what we've been doing that, and because of volume, therefore we can charge little that no one really feels that that happens, to make sure that it is sustainable. And also, if we are working as an ecosystem, then even by being an ecosystem is going to make it sustainable. So, but we have been charging for verification services, and we'll continue to do that, and we are charging a reduced rate and continuously reduce it to the barest minimum.
Okay, we've got a lot of technical questions coming up, so I'm going to lump them quickly so we can keep the discussion moving.
Okay.
What is your enrollment model? Are you going to open up centers throughout Nigeria? If so, how many centers will you think will be present in the next few years?
Well, the ecosystem will make all the centers of my stakeholders that are on the panel today to be available for the ecosystem. And we believe that when we do that, we'll have more than 10,000 centers available. But the very minimum for the population of Nigeria is that the standard is for every 50,000 people, you need a center. Therefore, for the 200 million, you need minimum of 4,000 centers. But right now, we have only about one quarter of that centers that we were able to capture these numbers.
Are these going to be fixed enrollment centers, or will you have mobile tablets where people go to the villages and do this? What's your model?
I believe that we have worked from beginning to have fixed centers so that to build the system and build the authenticity of the system. But right now that we have the system running, then it's better to even use the mobile system so that we go to the people rather than waiting for the people to come. And with that, we should be able to capture everyone.
What do you see the role of the private sector in this whole thing? I'm thinking also about the mobile network operators. Do you see a role for them in this whole thing? They've got big extent, they can touch the populations. How do you bring them in?
Well, when I spoke about ecosystem means both public and also private sector. And
okay.
Offer all the regulators that we have on this panel too have the private sector people that are capturing the data. So we see all of them playing a role here, and then we partner with their regulators so that to make it happen seamlessly.
Okay, so would you consider them as registrars, like in India, where they come to you and they bring you and they get paid per successful issuance of a NIM? Or will they have equipment that you purchased under the World Bank funding? How's that going to work?
No, NIBSS is not going to purchase any equipment. We are not going to do any leasing. That we will only license the both the public and private sector, and they will be the one to now take the form that is available and then capture the data. We will only pay on successful NIN registration. So,
Okay.
and we prefer to talk to the regulators, so that the regulators, like we, instead of talking to all the PFS, the pension agent, we prefer to talk to PENCOM, and then PENCOM talks to them so that we can streamline that that sector. So
I understand.
it is performance based and it is pay per play.
I understand. In the name of transparency, have you published what will you be paying per NIN issuance in terms of, will that be published and when will it be published?
Okay, well, we have not yet published that, but we are using the strategic roadmap that gives some figures there, and using those figures, we approximate what we have. But after having the PIU, then we'll come up with the business model. And in that business model, it will come up with the rate. And the rate is not going to be a constant rate, because the rate in the towns and the rate in the remote areas might be different, or based on geographical locations and also difficulties of the areas where we have security issues.
Indeed. The name of the game, inclusion. People are harder to get. You're going to pay more money to get them in.
Yes.
There is another question people are asking. The authentication service charge, is that publicly known, or is this something you keep for the MOUs with the agencies?
Well, we have MOUs with the agencies. Like when we started, it was pretty high, but as we are moving, we've been reducing it. So it's not a fixed rate, but there are some other rates that we publish on our website for diaspora and also for premium services in-house.
Okay, so people will find out that number. In fact, yeah. I want to commend you on the enrollment dashboard. Will you maintain that on the website? Because it shows how you're progressing. It shows what sectors, what regions. I think this is an important element. How is that happen? How's that going?
Yeah, well, right now we update it almost every week, but in future we intend to make it real life, that the moment that one NIN is generated, it should be reflected on the website because of the transparency, as you said.
Okay, I want to talk about two quick subjects, and then I want to move on by bringing in other members of the panel, and then maybe doing community voices and taking on some of the other questions that I haven't covered. One of the elements that the World Bank project supports is the establishment of services. And so what are the priority services that you believe are going to be launched first? And how do they work? Do they work through an API and they will only be available after an MOU? How does that work?
Well, our basic services is after the enrollment is to give authentication and verification services. So NIMC, as much as possible, will just remain in these services and allow the private sector and also the public institutions to ride on that verification to give additional services to the general public. But we want to remain.
Go ahead.
We want to remain in the core of that, enrolling and giving the unique NIN and also providing APIs for the verification services.
Right. Are there any pro-poor services that are being prepared in order to get this initial wave going?
Well, as I earlier says, we have a whole of Ministry of Humanitarian that in charge of social services and palliatives and the rest of it. We want to make sure that the service that we provide, either enrollment or also the verification service, is available to them, and then they will utilize it to make sure that there is accountability in all aspects. But as we are moving to a new ministry again, The minister may come up with a lot of policies to do with the digital economy, which will also ride on NIMC's platform. But as much as possible, as I said, we need to enroll everyone and make sure that we then provide those verification and authentication service.
Now, what is your vision? A lot of people are wondering about your vision for how you're going to do authentication services in rural areas where there is no connectivity and you don't have an offline model because everything is passing centrally.
Well, actually, right now, as you said, most of the things that we do is online, and there is also, we agree that there is need for offline, but those offline locations are very few. But also the NIN slip that we also are giving now has a QR code, which we intend to make it that in such a way that you can also do an offline authentication using the NIN slip itself.
So you will code the actual template into the QR code that accompanies the NIN, and it allows a one-to-one offline.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent. We have a lot more to discuss with you, so don't go away. Stay with us. I'm going to start bringing in some other people into this. I'd like to bring in Mrs. Adaku Obodo from the National Population Commission to join us to talk a little bit about how the civil registration fits into this overall scheme of digital identity for Nigeria. Welcome, Mrs. Obodo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atick.
So my first question for you is, can you give us a perspective on what is the status of civil registration today in Nigeria? How do people register for births and deaths? How big is your record? What are your assets?
Thank you so much. The state now is we have just launched the automated system, which we did on the 8th of August 2020 when we celebrated the CRVS Day. But prior to the launch, we were operating an analog civil registration system. We have well over 3,810 registration centers located right to the community level, manned by our registrars. So, because it's an analog registration system, so that gives us a lot of backlog of registered processed forms and generate the various things. So, but with the launching of this automated system, which we are going to start off at each in the 77 LGA of all the 36 states of Nigeria, including FCT Abuja, it's going to give us an average so as to stream. But correct, the commission is also to scan the backlog of forms we have already. Presently, we have scanned up to 12 million forms that we have their record in digital. 12 million that we have 12. Their record, yes, in digital form. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have them in digital. Yes. So we are also doing. We have having a digitalized registration in some states that UNICEF supported us. States like Kebbi, Sokoto, and Bauchi. So within these states now, as we have started the training of the automated system, these states now are going to have full coverage of automated system, which we expect that the data from there will be.
I think we're having technical difficulties.
So we're looking at a situation whereby, okay, am I on now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah. Froze for a while. Sorry, repeat. So you have the online registration now that you launched.
Yes. So we are going to now use PDAs our registrars are going to use the PDAs, which is going to be online and offline. When you are because we have a presence in centers that are in the hinterland, remote areas. So there are areas that you might not have a network immediately, but you can capture data. By the time you get to where there is network, you upload. So this is the system we are going to embark, because we know that most of the rural areas where we don't have direct network will be difficult. So you can't do online capturing. But that's what there are currently. This is the way we are going to do civil registration in Nigeria, because the infrastructure to start off, they're all down on the first level training, the second level training. So we are kickstarting in all the 7 local governments in all the states, starting with one registration center each. And with time, we hope to cascade to all the centers, providing the infrastructure for all the centers to take off digital registration of CRVS.
And a question for both of you at the same time. Will you issue a NIN at the same time you register births?
Yeah, we are collaborating with NIMC. The little challenge currently is because most of the registration now, they are in but the strategic roadmap on this ID ecosystem, which we are part of, and we are part of the technical working group. So we are looking at in the future, once the CRV system starts of digital registration, we harmonize the data and find a way with the technical working group. What they are looking at is to review our data, review the size of data we have and what we have, and then the way it will now link and hook up with NIMC, so as to link with every identity, because we know that our identity management starts from birth registration. That is the foundational ID. So by the time we automate the system, and the system is with NIMC, so as to link to the NIM number, which is the what we are looking forward to. That is what Nigerians in the state, and that is what MPC and NIMC are looking at. We have an ID management that starts from birth registration and then terminates at death registration.
Yeah, and you're actually provided with some funding by this project. I understand that your co-funded. Can you explain how that works?
The strategic roadmap itself identifies that both Population Commission and also NIMC are the foundational IDs. As she rightly says, identity starts at birth and it also ends at death. Therefore, there is need to capture this birth and also the death. So part of the funding, and it is stated in the the document, the project appraisal document, is that the commencement of that process is funded. So we are waiting for the commencement of this ecosystem approach. There's some funding there to commence this aspect of collaborating together, and also even World Bank agrees that there should be more funding that will come in the second phase that will be geared towards only the birth and death registration. But while NIMC is working on the backlog of adults, women, and vulnerable people that don't have any form of identity, then Population Commission will be focusing on that birth and death and also all the other vital registration, so that we can have the inclusive system.
Now, does that mean that you will be issuing NIN numbers without biometric deduplication, and then later on, when they become a little older, you will enroll them biometrically and verify? Is that how is that going to work? Are we going to see NIN
Yes, the way the system has been designed for children is that you need the name of one of the parents, then to tie the child to that parent or guardian. Then later on, until when the child becomes 16, then you now take the stable biometrics and then like in African culture, like cut the umbilical cord of the child so that the child will now become independent. So that is the way the system is, though we take the biometrics, but we do not depend totally on that biometrics. So the deduplication age, we brought it down to like 12 years to capture, to make sure that people that are sitting for exams are also, that their data is deduplicated into the system. But legally, they become 16, that they become independent.
Okay, so let me ask Mrs. Odobo. Mrs. Odobo, what's the value of digitizing the backlog if NIMC can capture them into their biometric database and issue them a unique number? Digitizing backlogs can cost a lot of money. We've seen it in certain countries. Can cost, if you do double digitization, it can cost about $1 a record. So that's like, you know, it could be a sizable fund. What's the value of digitizing for you?
Yeah, that's why we are concentrating now on making sure that the system is automated. In fact, we, after looking at the data, and we have that different agencies are collecting data on the same, so we felt that the better to automate the system, yet let every of our systems be automated. Data will be captured electronically. Once we have done that, it is for verification purposes. So once you have a data form, we are getting the new ones, and we intend to link with NIMC. Then other backlog can now come forward for verification, certification, and all that, because the kind of certification we get now is not the ideal one. A number of people do come, but the time they get to NIMC.
Yeah, Mrs. Odobo, we can't hear you well. Maybe we'll get back.
Register, they will say.
Yeah, Mrs. Odobo, the connection is very.
Certificate. If they don't have. Is it clear now?
It is better, but it keeps going out. And we if you can move quickly.
Okay,
so
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, what I said is that we are concerned.
Yeah, Mrs. Odobo, we'll get back to you, but I just want to
more on digital.
Yeah,
using the current BAT, the capture data using the in an electronic form.
Okay. Sorry, Mrs. Odobo, you're getting cut off, but I just want to ask DJ Aziz, is there a collaboration between you and the National Population Commission on death registration, or that's something that's not on your radar screen?
Well, as I said, there's a standing committee between NIMC and Population Commission, especially on the death and also a birth and death. That is the input and output into our database. That has not been done, but that is why also we have proper funding in the ecosystem funding. And once it commences, we have funding to make sure that this commences. And also the development partner says we even need more funding to make that happen. But that connection at the beginning for the birth and also the death.
Yes.
That is input and output is very, very important, and it is on high agenda.
Okay, great. I mean, you've got a fantastic project with wonderful deliverables. You've got to bring in 148 million people into the ecosystem, issue them in NIN, build online birth registration and baby death registration, and start connecting through the NIN the two systems so that digital identities from birth to death. You have services that you're going to link. You've got also stakeholder consultations, bringing in the voices of the community and bringing in the voices of the private sector, etc. I think it's a wonderful project. I want to bring in actually Hadija and the Oiwoh from Paradigm Initiative for just a few discussions related to the legal framework. And DJ Aziz, stay with us, and Madam Obodo, if your connection improves, stay with us. Hadija, unmute yourself, please, and Adegoke as well. Thank you again. I'm going to start with you, Hadija. There is currently in front of the National Assembly something called the National Assembly Data Protection Bill of 2020. Can you give us the status of that bill? What is this about?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Atick. The bill is not yet before.
Hadija, you're muted.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I said the bill is not yet before the National Assembly. It's still at the validation session. So what we have done as at Monday, 14th of September, we had a session whereby all the comments and inputs received from stakeholders, both public and private sector, and even the international community, were submitted, and we had a thorough review of the document from beginning to end. So currently the committee, the Legal Reform Working Group constituted by the President, is going into a 5-day retreat to take a deeper look of those comments before we get a final document that will go to the Attorney General of the Federation. And the document is going to the National Assembly as an executive bill. So generally what the document contains is a legal framework, a national framework that we're trying to do. But this does not say that the country does not have some basic privacy documentation. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria recognizes privacy as a right of individuals. Likewise, we have sectoral policies and subsidiary regulations. When you look at the NCC, the regulator for the telecom sector, they have regulations whereby they protect the consumers. The same thing with the banking industry. Likewise, the NIMC, there's already a regulation, a sectoral regulation to cover protection of data in the National Identity Database. And then the newest of which is the NDPR, which was a regulation of the NITDA, which is another agency under the Ministry of Digital Economy. So they have that regulation. So the essence of having the new bill is to make sure that there is a national legislation, an enactment with an independent regulator or body that oversees the issues of data protection in the country. And highlights of the bill is that the bill is proposing the setup of a commission as it is now, but from the different comments we have received so far, this is one area the committee is going to look at to see whether we should have a body as we propose in the draft bill, or look at the comments of having an independent regulator, making it a lean body or a huge body. Because when you listen to the comments that happened on that 14, almost every stakeholder wanted to be part of the composition of that body. So it will end up having 50 to 100 people. And government is going away from having large organization to leaner bodies. So it's one of the critical aspects that we are looking at. The body will be responsible for the protection of personal data, safeguard the rights of subjects, and then regulate the processing of personal data and other related matters. And the bill will be applicable to Nigerians and residents, public and private sector, controllers established in Nigeria, data subjects within and outside Nigeria, and foreign entities that are targeting Nigerians or Nigerian residents, and incorporated joint venture operations in Nigeria, foreign entities who maintain office branch or agency through which activities are carried out in Nigeria, and also foreign entities targeting people of Nigerian residents or Nigerian citizenship. So that is those are the areas where the commission, the entity will protect. And then the bill also incorporated the 8 principles of data protection. So all those principles are adequately covered in the bill. And it also establishes the legal basis, the basis for which personal data can be processed. And then the bill also expected the agency mandated to carry out this to regulate the processing, provide means of obtaining or detail those regulations that need to be done by the in processing and storage and transferring data. But the bill also set out the rights of data subjects. It clearly state out those rights, the right to access all the known rights in the GDPR and other international legislations were captured in the bill.
Now, Hadija, how is this commission going to be funded?
We have looked at different scenarios. There's going to be a kind of a starting funding by the government, but we have looked at instances where the commission will be getting like revenues from activities of other sectors. I know one of the proposals we have made is like the revenue generated from verification services by the NIMC. A percentage of that should go to the commission. Likewise, we're identifying other sectoral activities that are related to data, whereby in the public and private sector, whereby there will be a significant percentage that will go towards the funding of the authority.
Okay, excellent. So there is a mechanism for funding. It's not appropriation. It has to do with data activities by other sectors. This is not unusual. I think it makes sense. The question is, would it be enough? That's a model that we have to calculate, and we have to build a model. Hold on for a second. I want to bring in Adeboye. Adeboye, is there anything in the bill that gives any concern or raises your eyebrows? The draft bill, you've been involved in advising and looking at it from the civil society point of view. What's your assessment of this bill or draft bill?
The draft bill. Okay, thank you, Joseph. I think first we need to acknowledge the fact that there is no perfect bill or even law. It's always working. And I think the proper thing that should have been done was done in terms of asking for stakeholders to submit comments and identify areas of concerns in the bill. So from a civil society perspective, one thing we did was that we hosted a webinar to kind of collate civil society responses. And I think the key thing that stood out among things of was in the composition of the data protection, the proposed data protection commission, the composition of the board. And when I analyzed the bill, I see where the dilemma is. So you have this agency that's funded by a couple of other government agencies from the activity of other agencies, and then you feel compelled that those agencies must take in the commission since they are going to be responsible for funding. But that raises a red flag for us as a society in the sense that the proposed bill is populated by government stakeholders.
So it's not an independent commission. You feel
the independence is going to affect independence. Yeah, there's will have been independent. And in that, and you know, thinking along that line, we also now propose that in order to balance the participation or you know, the board, that then there needs to be more stakeholder outside of government. The other side of the argument in terms of also trying to ensure lean government, reducing the cost of government. One of the points that I made during the workshop, I couldn't stay all through the workshop, but I made sure that I connected online. I don't know if this comment was captured, but one of the response that I gave was that from civil society perspective, it is not about having more people on the board. It's about making sure that there is a balance. So if it is possible, for example, to reduce the number of government stakeholders on the board, then the argument that more people need to be brought on the board can be set aside, and then we then focus rather on ensuring that there is a balance, so that it's not just another government agency, but an agency that has independence in terms of its ability to really be a data protection agency that can really ensure that privacy rights are protected. So that's for me the key issue, the key standout issue in terms of the independence. And also talking in terms of independence is also the bill also give a lot of power to the president to determine appointments, remuneration, and all of that. One of the feedback we provided was that we can look at the Kenya model, for example, in terms of how the Data Protection Commissioner is to be appointed, go through some rigorous process, not that we just allow the president to choose, which if care is not taken, that position would then be taken by party men who are just going to be rewarded based on their loyalty to a particular political party or to a particular government in power at time. So we think it's also very important that those provisions needs to be looked into in such a way that, because it will not be, the commission will not be independent because it is called independent. It will be independent if it is designed to be independent. And that's what we think it's important to ensure that everything that, setting up the commission must go through a process that defines its independence by design, not because it is called independence. If it is called independence and it is not designed to be independence, then its independence will not depend on the disposition of the government that is in power per time. That is not what we don't want. That's something we don't want to happen. We want it to be independent by its design, to be able to make decisions by itself and not subjected to unnecessary influence because its resources or because decision making are to kind of fall back to the political authority. So those are the key. That's a major concern. There are a couple of other concerns that we also shared around how some provisions which are good provisions and which are meant to protect data, but which can affect the work of journalists. So there are some of those feedbacks that we also provided in terms of also ensuring that the work that journalists are protected, and in terms of needing information to do their work and all of that. So some provisions in the bill which are good provisions towards ensuring that information and data are protected. We also propose that some of those provisions needs to be adjusted in such a way that journalistic work is factored in, and just to ensure that journalists are not denied the opportunity to carry out their work and do their work. So those two are key. Yeah.
I understand. Hold on. I'm going to bring both of you, Hadija, as well on this issue. And this is something that I see in almost every data protection framework anywhere in the world. But in this case, when I looked at this, I saw that the list of exceptions where this data protection framework or legal framework does not apply is somewhat large. I look at it and I see public interest, public order, safety, morality, national security, prevention of and detection of crime, apprehension, detection of tax evasion, literary work, things that are not really easy to define. What is morality as a definition? If it has to do with morality, then this does not apply. Hadija, does this bother you that you've got a framework that has huge exceptions that trucks can pass through it, and those are exceptions that are subject to interpretation? Please unmute yourself, Hadija.
Yes, Dr. Atick, it does. And as I stated at the beginning, most of the comments we receive, apart from the composition, is to do with that part of the restriction, especially for public interest. because the general comment we receive is like the act is trying to protect the government from being transparent, you know, that there will not be transparency of governance if we go with what we currently have in the draft bill. So, like I stated, we have had different perspectives from both lawyers, from other interest groups on that particular section. So what we are doing is we are collating those comments, and every comment from every sector that we receive is going to be looked into. So that's what we are doing. Yeah. The draft bill is just to ginger those discussions, and we are happy with the responses we have received, because we have received responses from more than 100 organizations as at date. Yeah.
Fantastic. Adeboye, she addressed it, and she believes that it is a concern and that's something that needs to be worked through. Let me ask a different question. What does civil society believe? Who should own identity data?
In terms of who should own identity data, for me, I think the primary owner is the individual himself. But in terms of custody, I think that is the question that needs to be answered, because of the responsibility of government to its citizens. There is a responsibility on government to be a custodian of data in that regard. But it's also very important then to say that within that same context, every other agitation, whether by civil society or citizens or lawyers, is around ensuring that government as the custody of that data must then demonstrate a very high level of responsibility in terms of, the trust that is, vested in government, in terms of people volunteering their personal information and all of that. It's like a social contract between the citizen and the government. So there needs to be a system of accountability, because at the end of the day, we need government to be in custody of this data for different reasons, from security to humanitarian reason to, reasons. But at the same time, government must demonstrate a very high sense of responsibility in terms of how it handles that data, in terms of, security, privacy, and the power of consent in how those data are also used for whatever reason they are being used for.
Right. Okay. I want to ask DJ Aziz, and Adija, you can chime in if you have an additional thing to add to this issue. DJ Aziz, does it give you concern that your authentication model is based on a centralized database, so all the transactions come in and then they can be accumulated? What prevents the emergence of a surveillance, even if you did not intend to do that? Let's say in 20 years, you are successful in the world and you do something else and somebody else comes in. Your good intention was not to create a surveillance system. How do you build the privacy by design in the transactional element of the authentication of NIMC?
Well, that is really a forward-looking question, but I believe that if, as Adeboye started, he said there is no perfect system that you start with, but intentions, actions are really judged by intention. So the intention of this system that we are using, the World Bank and the development partners, is to have privacy by design. And we believe that right now you can authenticate the NIN directly, but we believe that very soon we are introducing tokenization to even the NIN itself, so that we do not expose the NIN. And in future too, we'll be developing more and more systems to make sure that that privacy by design, that intention, that it is not going to be a surveillance system. And since we are in a form of a democracy, so and not having some dictators, so we believe that that the system will continuously be evolving in that direction. And our intention is that if it is going to be used for surveillance, then we would rather not the data.
I understand. Hadija and then Adeboye, let's close with this point.
Yes, Dr. Atick, in addition to the infrastructural devices and code that DG discussed, I think looking from the regulatory perspective, we have to look at also the terms of engagement with our relevant partners and stakeholders in carrying out this verification service. What kind of conditions do we put in place? What are the do's and don'ts? What are the regulatory provisions in those agreements that or licenses that we issue to this group of partners that we have? That's what I will add.
Okay, thank you, Hadija. Adeboye, quickly, please, on this point, so we can move on.
Yeah, so what I just want to add quickly is also the importance of public and judicial accountability. I think that's something that can help, especially in terms of envisaging problems that may arise in the future. Currently, I'm actually working on a letter that I intend to send to the steering committee on digital ID, including NIMC, to make a case for the need for that kind of public accountability system, whereby you can independently, for example, ensure that each licensee of NIMC, whether performing verification exercise or authentication exercise, whatever responsibility NIMC has asked them to undertake, are accountable judicially and also publicly, but we'll take that engagement forward after this session. We would engage NIMC on what we are proposing in that regard to ensure that there is an accountability system apart from the design that has been spoken to, so that going forward, irrespective of which regime takes power tomorrow, and even if a dictator becomes, the president or whatever, we have a system in place that ensures that the public can hold institutions, or whether private or government, accountable for what they are doing with the data in their custody or with the services they are providing with regarding to, digital ID system.
Let me ask one final question here. What is the recourse model? Is it viewed that only the commission can bring action against violators, or an individual private entity they feel they were wronged under the law can bring action directly? I mean, there are two models. Some countries don't allow you to bring a data action. It has to go through the commission that will bring the data action. Does anybody know what direction you're going into? Hadija, do you know what's the going model right now?
Well, currently the going model is both, because Paradigm Initiative also has instituted actions for some breaches. Likewise, NIMC, based on our contractual relationship with the service providers, also can do that. So it's a dual that operates within the country.
Okay, you don't need the commission to actually be the only pathway. You can actually do it as a private entity.
Yes, interest group do that.
Okay, really. Okay, hold on one second. I want to do two things. I want to call for a poll. There's a poll that we prepared for, so that the crowd that is listening will wake up a little bit. And then at the same time, anybody that wants to join the panel on an ad hoc basis during the community voices, just raise your hand and have the operator take a look at you to bring you on during this poll period. So can I ask the operator to ring the poll and also check, please, to see who is interested in joining. So it's only one question. Basically, from the list below, just select one of the biggest concern regarding identity data. It's not rank them or anything, just one concern. So one could be law enforcement and national security access to civil data, unauthorized access to data by sale and breach, surveillance through transactions, linkage to unique ID, using data for discrimination or exclusion, and then lack of transparency related to processing, retention, and out-of-scope use of data. So if you had to choose one thing that concerns you, what will it be? So please vote. Please vote. In the meantime, I'm going to check if anybody wants to join, just so that we can continue then with the functional partners. I'm going to check who wants to join the community voices. So please vote while we look to upgrade somebody into the community voices. Okay, we are getting. Okay, we're going to close the voting in 1 minute. Operator, could you please prepare somebody from the community voices and we bring them on while you prepare to put the results after. Do we have anybody who's interested in joining the community voices? Okay, yes, we do have several candidates. Operator, bring a candidate from the community voices. Let's see what the issue is and what they are interested in. And then record the results of the poll and put them up on a slide after we bring in the community voices. So please bring in the community voice. Let's see, do we have I'm trying to record the results just so that once they eliminate the poll. Okay, so please end the poll so we can move on. Okay, I see, do we have the community voice? No, close the poll, we'll come back to it in a slide. Do I see somebody coming on the community voice? I don't see on the screen. Yes, Kenneth. Kenneth, could you please introduce yourself and join the discussion? You can thank you for this question, not to do with data privacy or anything like that. Anything on foundational identity so far.
Oh, thanks so much, Joseph. My name is Kenneth. I work for the National Health Insurance Scheme. And the topic of discussion is really very, very important, especially as the world is going towards the appreciation of the digital identity. I think the work that NIMC is doing with all the collaborations from the other agencies is a very worthy one that will really take the Nigerian case forward. But I wanted to point out that the issue of access and the issue of unauthorized access is a big one that needs to really be tackled. And that's the reason why the usage of multiple biometrics for the population of the identity database has to be perfected. I say this because for people in areas where critical identity is required, the question of unauthorized access has a lot of impact, whether it's in the financial industry or in healthcare, in aviation. It is a critical role that needs to be factored. And therefore, my recommendation is that for all the proposals that go within the identity ecosystem, the issue of access has to be placed in the front burner so that we can get it right at the first instance. Having said that, I also want to suggest that security should never be an afterthought. However, it should be part and parcel of the entire design and development of a very good foundational system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hold on. DJ Aziz, what is your data model for for capturing multiple biometrics?
Well, if I understand you correctly, so far we are capturing the face and also capturing the fingerprints, the 10 fingerprints, and we also have planned to introduce the iris because we already have it at the back end. So, but when it comes to harmonization, I believe that when he's talking about multiple identities, talking about harmonizing from all the other agencies, and so far is only that of the banking sector that we have harmonized, and because we are following similar standards. The other ones that have not been following the same standards, we have not harmonized those data. And I agree with him that security should be by design, and also that unauthorized access, in fact, is in the NIMC's current act, is the most draconian part of the law, that in unauthorized access fetches 10 years imprisonment without even any option of fine. So I believe that it is a very serious matter.
Serious issue. Okay, but definitely it is on your radar screen. It is something that you are going to be building on, and you are building also the platform for multiple biometrics. It's a multimodal platform to deal with this issue of access and giving you the flexibility as well. Excellent. I will have time just to take one more community voice before we move to the functional discussions. So operator, could you please elevate somebody from the community voice? See who comes on. Yes, please introduce yourself and who are you and what do you do?
Hi, my name is CJ Aguele. I am CEO for Verify Me Nigeria. We are a ID verification technology company in Nigeria.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So please state your contribution.
Thank you. So first of all, we definitely support the ecosystem approach for identity enrollment services in Nigeria. We believe it's going to produce efficient opportunities to leverage private sector technical capabilities to scale enrollment services. At Verify Me, we've worked closely with the government. We are a licensed agent of NIMC. In 2013, our founder was actually poisoned by somebody who did not have proper identity, he and his family. And this was basically the inception of our company when we realized the issue of digital trust was a serious one in Nigeria. We have grown since and become a company that delivers digital ID to industry across the board, doing about 50,000 address verifications and a few 100,000 monthly. This puts us in a position to properly understand the private sector challenges in Nigeria as it relates to government. So we're very happy to be here in terms to talk to this panel. One of the things that, and I've heard many things about security, I do feel that the Nigerian government has taken very good steps to enforce security, and we look at it in three categories from our perspective. There's the cybersecurity aspect that protects data, which is really governed by ISO standards, the ISMS ISO standards. There is the gathering and curation of data, which is governed by CBN directives for tier 3 account opening, and then the anti-money laundering directives. And then there's the publishing of information, which is governed by NDPR. And the government has, over the months, we found taken steps to make sure that we're mature in all of these areas. However, I would like to see more participation of private sector. One of our concerns and our challenges is the understanding of the intention to grow the digital ID industry in Nigeria. As we talk about security or we talk about two-factor authentication, the private sector must be included to make sure that we're also not passing policies that are going to slow down the ability for industry to process hundreds of thousands of ID verifications, particularly even in a day, so that businesses can grow. Right. It's important to talk about, security when we talk about ID verification, but the reason also we're here in Nigeria, which is critical for us, is revenues for business, right? Which is the ID verification industry, which right now is probably a $500 million a year industry for Nigeria if it's curated properly, right? Mm-hmm. It's revenues, it's taxes, it's thousands of jobs that have so many, I would say, so much impact that we cannot even properly measure at this time. So my contribution is, I would say that I would really, really love to see more involvement of private sector and more keen regulation to grow an ID verification industry that's going to contribute to the GDP of this country. As we talk about national security, as we talk about, protecting data, we can protect data all we want, but people also, need to have jobs, and we need to look for innovative ways to grow our economy. So this is why we're here, and we're really looking forward to having that conversation as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wanna close this section by going back to DG Aziz. DG, when I look at all the questions that I'm getting, and I'm going to try to get to them at the end if I can, a lot of them have to do about wanting an assurance of how the private sector is going to be included in this ecosystem. What economic opportunities are you going to be bringing to them? When will you be licensing the partners? When will you be letting the model? I mean, many of these questions, you could tell me you have not yet gotten them done, but what is your timeline to bringing the private sector? Too many questions about this issue.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Atick. We have been together in this for a very long time, and I believe that it's because we are following processes so that we don't make great mistakes. So as we are following the ecosystem approach, and we are just at the point of evaluating to get the project implementation office and the ecosystem office in place. And once we have gotten those in place, we believe that the next thing is to get the firms that will also do the business plan so that we get all these things out in place. We have already advertised and taken the expression of interest from the private sector. Some of them we have already published. And then the second one, we are also going to publish very soon, because even the IDPs that we wanted, the plan, when we get to the government, we said that it's the private sector that we wanted to really go and capture this data. And it is the private sector that we have given the verification platform in 2016, free of charge. Go and test this before we started even charging a little bit. And we wanted the economy to grow. And as the minister says, that for the digital economy to grow, we need the digital identity. So my own focus is to really get the data and open it up for the private sector to really grow the economy very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we will do is we are going to hide this panel. I'm going to start bringing the functional people, and then I'll bring you back in towards the end. So while we're hiding the panel, I'd like to ask the operator to actually show us the results. Okay, so what is your biggest concern regarding identity data? Basically dovetails with what we've just said, unauthorized access to data. That was what Kenneth said. Sale and breach, people are very, very concerned about that. Using data for discrimination and exclusion comes as second, so that's a serious issue. And then lack of transparency. They want to know what's happening, retention, out of scope, use of data. And then the least one was they don't worry about law enforcement, national security, access to civil data. Surveillance through transactions, people seem to trust that that's not going to happen as well, so that's very low. This is an interesting poll. I think we will publish it on Twitter so that we can share it with everybody, but definitely it does have some surprising results. Okay, let us, in the interest of time, now move on to bring in the functional partners. The partners are functional for NIMC that rely on the foundational, or they have their own identity systems that we're going to study now. I'll start with the banking. We're supposed to have two people from the banking sector, but I believe one of them had another meeting that had to go to that's conflicting at the moment. So we're going to start with whoever we have. Could you please bring in the banking sector? Premier, I think he's with us from NIBSS. Premier, thank you so much. I believe we also we're supposed to have from CBN Musa, Jimoh, but I believe you can speak for both because NIBSS is part of the central bank. Isn't that correct?
To a large extent, we work with them.
Okay, you work with them. Now, let me start by first of all, congratulate you and the CBN for the success of the BVN project. I think by all measures, this has been a very successful initiative. Could you please explain a little bit about what was the BVN, how did it work, how did the enrollment take place, and what's the size today of BVN database?
Thank you very much. The BVN was officially launched on February 14th, 2014 in Lagos, Nigeria. And it was an initiative put together by the Central Bank and the Bankers Committee. Bankers Committee is a combination of all the CEOs of all the banks in Nigeria. And it was put together to solve a major problem. One was to the issue of KYC within the banking ecosystem, then uniquely identify customers, and to help mitigate incidences of fraud and track, and also deal with customer-related issues by uniquely identifying the customers. So that has been on. All the banks are licensed agents to capture BVN. It's a requirement for you to have an account in Nigeria, whether you are a resident or not. We also, at the initial stage, the banking industry also worked with NIMC very well and actively to put together the infrastructure and then the plan to capture the BVN. So basically, we have the 442, what we call the 442 model. That's approach for the fingers, and then we also capture face, and of course, basic biodata information. So as of today, which is as of yesterday, close of business yesterday, we have 43,583,554 captured BVN as at close of business yesterday in our database. And out of this, we have close to about 55% male, and the balance 45% women.
Now, how do you see them coexisting? I mean, there are models. People will say, you do want to keep the BVN and the NIN alive independently, but there is a sustainability issue because it's a sectoral identifier. Somebody would say, I want to use my BVN as, and therefore I don't want the health sector to know what I'm doing in the financial sector. Does that mean the BVN and the NIN will live independently, or do you think you're going to migrate always towards the NIN?
Well, at least for today, I think as of today, they will leave. It's just like if you have a passport, there's a passport number, and there is a name on that passport. You have a driver's license, there's a license number, and you also have a name. So the same way we see the BVN, it's not competing or it's not superior to the national identity number, but a number used for banking-related activities and transactions, and for our own internal analysis.
So it gives people a choice. I mean, will you accept a NIN, or will you insist that it has to be BVN for a transaction? At some point, if somebody has a NIN, do they need to get a BVN?
Well, I think the kind of relationship we share with NIMC is an interoperable kind of relationship, and yes, exactly. So having a BVN with the arrangement with NIMC, which was put together in 2016 by MOU, automatically having a BVN qualifies you to have a NIN. And between NIMC and us today, we have close to 40 million data exchange, and I think a lot more, the balance is going to follow.
Are there problems in the harmonization?
I don't think there's any problem. We have a perfect working relationship with NIMC. It's more like a very great collaboration. And I think from the inception of the BVN won't be what it is today without the central bank and then NIMC also guiding, and because it was quite clear to the industry that we needed to work with NIMC, and that has been going on for the past 10 years.
Actually, this reminds me of something that somebody raised in the chat, and it has to do with the Swedish bank ID. Sweden has a national ID number, and they have a Swedish bank ID. The Swedish bank ID is actually established by a consortium of banks, and so it is acceptable for banking transactions. They have the same rigor by which the government is vetting and issuing the national ID number. So they both coexist. And so basically what I'm hearing from you is that the BVN and the NIN are thought to be linked, complementary, but will give people the option at some point to choose. If they want to do a transaction with the BVN, they don't need to use the NIN.
Well, I mean, if there's something we are doing with the BVN basically, which is for financial inclusion. But like I said,
right,
BVN or NIN, we are linked. We're working together with NIMC. That is clear. That's on the table. So, but one of the aspects, like the Swedish example you shared, we are building a lot of models around the BVN. For instance, in Nigeria today, you can go to an ATM and withdraw with your metric, with your fingerprint, without a card. So you just use the BVN and then you withdraw. There's a lot more being built. One of the problems we have in the country is data, availability of data across the ecosystem. I heard the DG of NIMC talking about the QR code for NIN and being able to verify it offline. So also we're providing services of financial activities built that cooperate within an offline mode and relying on those kind of activities as well as built around the BVN model.
So you're actually continuing to enroll at the banks. The banks are continuing to enroll.
Yes, we'll have to continue to enroll.
Continuing to enroll, even though there are other, you become a registrar essentially for NIN.
That all those conversations are ongoing, and I think that's how it's going to be done in line with the law of the country. We will not just go on our own and start enrolling, but one thing I would like to put on the table is that there's a very cordial working relationship between the two entities, which is CBN and NIMC on one side and NIBSS for and on behalf of the banking industry.
I understand. And basically, people would ask the question, I mean, the people who have bank accounts are people that have other forms of ID, they're able to establish their ID. What about the poor? How do we bring in the poor into the banking sector and give them low-cost transactional banking platform? Are you thinking about building that?
Yes, something has already been done. The Central Bank of Nigeria have also created various tiers of accounts, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And within the tier 1 type of account, you are allowed to have minimum balances and you can transact at that level with or without an ID card. And as the volume begins to increase, you have to find a means of identification to come in. And that's to help bring in the financially excluded who are poor and who have no means of ID. But with what NIMC is doing, reaching out to various parts of the country, and in partnership, our own partnership with NIMC, as well as other stakeholders, we tend to move into some of these rural areas and also begin to capture people and bring them fully into the database.
Excellent, excellent. I think this is fantastic to see the cooperation between the two agencies in order to establish the coverage and also to bring in new players, new operators with the new value rhetoric. With the interest of time, I want to bring in other actors in the functional space. Operator, can you bring in the immigration, PENCOM, and the national health insurance, please? So while we're seeing the rest of the panelists, welcome Mr. Ikharo and Mrs. Usoro. I think are we missing immigration, or were they able to join us? While they're trying to find immigration, I have a question for both of you, and it basically, here's immigration. Welcome, Mr. Adamu. Is the NIN required for entry into your service world? Do you require somebody to provide you for NIN as a prerequisite? So we can start with Mr. Adamu, then Grace, and then Nasir. Mr. Adamu, can you hear me? Maybe Grace, you can unmute and answer that question, and then we can get back to Adamu, Mr. Adamu. Yes, do you need a NIN to enter into the pension system?
Thank you, Dr. Atick. The pension industry has actually gone through a lot of transformation. We actually started out in 2005 with a robust system that had its own unique identity for the pension industry. But with the government pronouncement and the mandate given to NIMC, we had to shift grounds immediately. And we made the NIN mandatory for contributors coming into the contributory pension scheme. Yes, so as fast as in 2018, we started a direct handshake with NIMC, which made it mandatory that for anyone to register their retirement savings account, it had to first of all have a NIN. And to that extent, our systems, all the registration systems within the pension industry is linked directly with NIMC database to ensure that the NIN was first in place before the retirement savings accounts identification number was issued.
Two questions for you. How large is your database? And then if somebody doesn't have a NIN, what do you do? Do you enroll them or do you send them to NIMC?
Yes, presently we have a database that is a bit over 9 million.
9 million.
And, yes, and the contributory pension scheme is largely employment-based. Therefore, it follows that for anyone to be registered in the contributory pension scheme, he first has to have a bank account because most salaries are paid through the bank. Right. So one would also expect that a good number of people would have the BVN, would have the NIN.
Okay.
Yes, so what it is currently is we are already in the pension industry collaborating with NIMC to ensure that all our pension fund administrators are able to help their prospective clients to generate the NIN as part of the process of registering the retirement savings account. And Engineer Aziz has talked a lot about that and the steps being taken to enlist partners in this process. And the pension industry is one of those. As it is, we are already set in terms of IT infrastructure and handshake with NIMC. All we're waiting for is for all the administrative issues on the NIMC end before our pension fund administrators are able to register the NIN. Yes.
Okay, hold on there. Let me go back to Mr. Adamu. Adamu, can you hear me and can you speak? The question back again is, do you need a NIN to get a passport? And how large is your passport database? And if somebody doesn't have a NIN, what do you do? We lost Mr. Adamu once again. Maybe we can go to Mr. Ikharo, the same question, and while we get the information.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Atick. Before I answer that question, I want to tell our viewers a little bit about the NHIS, which is a National Health Insurance Scheme that will drive demand. The National Health Insurance Scheme is the only agency of the federal government of Nigeria that has the mandate to ensure universal health coverage for all Nigerians. In other words, we're on the demand side of the health equation to ensure that as long as you're a Nigerian, you should be able to have access to the healthcare services that you need. So it cuts across the entire population. So NHIS has designed the program that is targeting both the vulnerable, both the informal sector and the formal sector. So the entire population ought to be covered. So we right now are putting structures and infrastructures in place to integrate our database with NIMC in compliance with government harmonization project. And we're also investing in data capturing devices and equipment in order for us to use our various state offices and other state insurance agencies, okay? Every state government in the country, in Nigeria right now, is setting up its own health insurance agency. And they all are going to be capturing, to enroll into the health insurance programs at various stages. So because we have the mandate and it's also now compulsory that there should be health insurance cover for every Nigerian, and now that the NHIS has made a pronouncement that we need a NIN in the course of registration into the various programs, insurance programs of the scheme, you find that NHIS is pretty much one agency that will drive demand for the national ID. So right now in the registration processes, we are requesting every enrollee to submit a NIN. So if you don't have a NIN, we are setting up the infrastructure. The integration with NIMC is this year. We have it on the budget. We integrate to them, and you will be needing the national ID before you can enroll into the NHIS program. And because health is personal and it's touching every individual from zero to grave, you find out that because they have to access care, they will be needing NIN at one point or the other. Right now, we have about 10 million enrollees in the database. Some of them have NIN because some of them are federal workers. They have NIN. Their dependents don't have NIN right now. So, but now that we are requesting that every enrollee of the NHIS should have a NIN, it then means that we are going to verify all our current records in the database of those 10 million to ensure that every enrollee on the database has a NIN. It's going to help us in so many ways, because if NHIS is not just about enrollment, there is a verification at the point of care. When our enrollees go to the facilities, they need to be verified that they are the individuals they are before they can access care. Then there is the payment mechanism part of it. The two payments we are making is called capitation, which is advance payment that will pay to the hospital whether you go there or not.
Can you come back?
And
I'm having an international.
And then fee for service. And then fee for service. Okay, so for that capitation, the capitation is dependent on the number of enrollees that are per hospital. So the NIN will allow us to truly verify and deduplicate our database so that we save money. So that is where we are on the roadmap to both harmonization with NIMC, and also that we have made NIN to be compulsory field in enrollment into our NHIS program in the country.
Let me ask you, because health insurance is really family-based, are you going to be able to create a new kind of register, which is basically a family register, which will link the NINs for the various members of the family or even household? Is that something that you're contemplating on doing? Mr. Ikharo, can you hear me? I guess we've lost the connection with Mr. Ikharo. Grace, I would funnel the question to you. Is your register? Okay. Oh yes, Mr. Ikharo. Are you creating a family register?
Yeah, yes, actually what the programs we have is targeting both the individual.
Okay.
You can come in as an individual to register into the program. We also have a family program where if you have between 4 family, and you can come in that wise. And then there is a group program that targets higher. So the various programs are targeted at the various either individual, family, or group. And whichever the case, we are saying that you need a NIN. Just like the DG has mentioned, if the parents are involved and you have a kid, then the NIN of those parents will have to be tied to the NIN of the baby. So, and our system is designed that way to manage that data.
Okay. So you're actually creating a new type of register, which is a very important concept, because for social protection, I think we need to know not just the individual, we also need to know the household. We need to know who's living with whom in order to create a better model of their needs. And for health is a one aspect. I imagine in the health program, there are different tiers of payments, because somebody who has the means in the formal sector will pay differently than the informal, or somebody who is very vulnerable. I imagine you have a different set of program.
Yeah, it's really equitable. It's equitable for those who are in the formal sector. It's a percentage of their salaries that is being contributed to the health fund pool. And for individuals, there is one for the high end, which is about 15,000 naira per individual flat per year. And you can bring in members of your family under that. Each member of your family will be 15,000 naira. But if you are working in an environment, it's a percentage base, which is about 5.something% of the salaries of the individual. So that makes it equitable in terms of the fund pool for the health insurance. Yeah.
Excellent. Grace, I remember back a few years ago, there was a plan which basically said 20 million in 2020 for the pension ecosystem. Was that too ambitious?
Thank you, Dr. Atick. The corporate strategy for the pension industry indeed had that target. And in terms of stratification of the pension industry, we have states contributing a significant chunk of that pension system, as well as the private sector and the federal government. With hindsight and assessing that strategy, a lot of things have happened that have made it a kind of uphill task to achieve that strategy. And one of such is the political will on the part of the states. As we speak, in terms of projection for coverage of the states, we are short in the upper side.
Okay.
Short for about over 60% short.
60%, roughly.
Yes, evaluation of coverage from the state governments. We have put structures in place to extend the coverage for the state governments. But the critical thing is the fact that states are allowed to legislate for their pension arrangements. Yes, in line with the constitution of the country. So it depends on the priorities of the state governments. Yes, but we have a lot of states in the forefront of driving the contributory pension scheme. States like Kaduna State, Lagos State, they are doing extremely well. And states like Imo State in the east, they are just taking steps to adopt the contributory pension scheme. And a lot of states in the north too are coming up. So we believe that when the next corporate strategy is going to be in place, already we have started steps to reassess our strategy and retweak it and reposition our drive for coverage. We believe that other things would be put in place to incentivize the states to adopt the contributory pension scheme. So the paradigm shift would be creating more incentives for the states to come into the scheme.
Excellent. I actually noticed that Jimoh, Mr. Jimoh was with us from the CBN. I've got a question for him that we have not asked in NIBSS. Actually, can you bring in Mr. Jimoh? Thank you very much. I know you had to be with the governor, and so you had to leave and you're back. Your colleague from NIBSS, Premier, did a great job explaining to us the BVN program, and congratulations, it's a successful initiative of the central bank. We have one question for you, which has to do with the evolution of the credit bureaus in Nigeria. Now that if you have a solid identity policy that you're going to be putting in place that will stimulate retail credit so that you can bring in the retail banks to start giving credit to people. What's your view on the credit industry in Nigeria, given now that you've solved a most important portion of the identification problem?
Thank you very much. I think one of the major challenges that the financial service providers were having in terms of granting credits, especially when we take credit to Nigerian individuals was the issue of identity, how to identify those that they're actually providing credits to. With the BVN, the bank verification number, I think it's very easy now to uniquely identify those people. And in terms of loan recovery, it has also made it very possible for them to look around the entire industry and know where they have their money, so that when they want to recover, they can actually surveil the entire banking system and get the money recovered. So for me, it's the ground has been prepared for those kind of industries to offer credit services to Nigerians now.
Is there a policy, a national policy that really invests in bringing the retail banking sector? I mean, a lot of the multinationals have been looking at Nigeria and saying, when is the time to come back in?
Well, there are a couple of companies that are offering credit services right now, though they are not within our radar. There are a couple of them that we see their advert there, where they basically ask people to use their phone numbers as a means of identity or some other form of identity to come and take credit and all that. I think that there is no regulation right now for those kind of institutions. You have to be a bank to offer credit. That's the regulation of that. If you want to offer credit, be a bank. For those that are doing those within the shadow economy, what we're trying to do is to see how we can bring them all together and see what kind of regulation we can put in place. The challenges that they used to have, which has to do with identity, has been solved, even the CBN and NIN. And I think a couple of them will begin to show face, and then we'll begin to regulate the industry.
Yeah, and I think as data starts to accumulate, and there is a framework for regulating data access and data protection, you can have legitimate ways of doing data governance, which allow the banking sector to develop risk profiles. So I think there's going to be an interesting evolution, and we intend to come back to that subject in one of our future livecasts, and we would love to have you back talking about your vision for how the credit industry in Nigeria will work using data and using the identifier BVN. So really fantastic subject. I wanna move on to a sector that is very, very important sector, and that's the largest identity database that exists today, and that is INEC. INEC has developed its own database, and that seems to be independent from this ecosystem. I would like to ask Chidi, first of all, Chidi, thank you for being with us. I'd like to ask you to give us a perspective on where does INEC stand in the ecosystem. Is it outside or is it inside? And how is the harmonization going to happen, if it will happen?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very sorry for joining a little bit late due to network issues. Yes, INEC has no other option than to obey the directive from the federal government, not only because it will help them, it will also help the objective of the harmonization. So we are in harmonization with NIMC. However, we have re-strategized. I need to inform the public that there's no way INEC can move on without NIMC. If you look at our platforms nowadays, we do nomination. That nomination is nominating individuals that we need to have their identities. Politicians, we need to have their identities. But the issue of our harmonization now is our voter registration. Today, we have about 84 million. We have even done some tests with NIMC in terms of harmonization of a sample of our data, and it was good. And so that is on the aspect of voter registration. How do we make this data to be fully harmonized with NIMC? We also have another section in our process, which is authentication, accreditation, or verification, whatever you want to call it. We need NIMC to do that. And therefore, the only thing that actually NIMC will prepare the background, that we don't really need them, is the e-balloting or the transmission of results. But even other things, we need to do that. So for now, I can say, number one, we're in harmonization with them. Number two, the data we have before, I've done some tests, and it passes a lot of to do proper harmonization. But one good thing now is that NIMC and INEC is planning to do what is called revalidation. This is very key. Everybody, very key. We have to revalidate the card, the card that you have. Are you in the register? Come back with your PVC, and then we will check you. We'll bring up the system, and then we'll revalidate you. And we intend to work with NIMC, because once we revalidate you, if you don't have a NIN, NIMC gives you NIN. If you have a NIN, you now attach NIN to your own data. So that revalidation, which we are trying to start by first quarter of next year, might really start with Anambra State. There's a state in our country, Anambra State, because they have election towards the end. So we are on with them. Thank you. Okay.
Let me ask you, will the political parties accept that the voter register will be based in the future on a NIN that is issued by a ministry, or that issue, has that issue been discussed, the issue of trusting the integrity of the data politically?
Yes, yes, I understand that. We will still be doing the registration, but this time we are working in partnership with NIMC. So NIMC data will be more of verification. So once we finish verification with them and the data is okay, we use it. So INEC constitutionally supposed to have that register. But because we are doing harmonization, whatever we get, we take it to NIMC. NIMC will scrub it, give the person name. Those that do not have name, the NIMC working on with us physically, because we intend to, in future, move into 10,000. And I think the federal government is supporting it. The commission is supporting it, and we're starting first quarter. So we will still hold data, but foundationally, and the authentication and duplicating will be done by NIMC. We are the custodian of the voter register, so we bring it out, but we work with NIMC to do all the processes so that it will be, and it will help NIMC because it will push up the data a lot. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's a great model. The idea is that yes, you don't give up your constitutional mandate of saying my register, I gotta issue the register, I gotta manage the register, but I use a data point NIMC to validate and
exactly.
So that's a great way, a model for harmonization that does not supplant the mandate of an independent commission like the INEC. So thank you for that elaboration. That means you will continue every 5 years to have your updates of your register, no?
Okay, no. What we have planned is that we're working that the mandate is given that by the end of 2022, INEC must have gotten enough data, at least to now depend on INEC, but on NIMC. But you know, let's get there, and then some legal issues, constitutional and electoral act will be handled. But for now, we are pushing that by 2022, all what we have will also be with NIMC, so that we can do a lot of verification and other process. Because like I told you, we are now doing nomination in terms of registering for people to nominate. We can do some verification with the names and so many things, even polling agents, thousands of polling agents that you have in during an election, we can verify them using those data from NIMC.
Okay, very, very interesting. We intend to dedicate a LiveCast in the future on identity management in electoral systems. So I'm sure we'll bring you back again. You've been always an inspiration for us all throughout the years, explaining from the ground how this is done. I'm cognizant of the time, and so I want to use just the last few minutes for whoever is with us, still with us. If you have a parting words of wisdom, and clearly the challenge is massive, but also the opportunity is exciting. I mean, this is an ecosystem that is being developed as we speak. I want to leave DJ Aziz as the last word, but I will go to everybody else. But DJ Aziz, your question is a special question. I would like you to think about what keeps you up at night. So when I come back to you, please let us know what keeps you up at night. I know you've got big shoulders, so you can take all the pressure, but please tell us and how do you think that can be managed? So let us start with Mr. Jimoh from CBN. Any Any parting words in terms of how do you see the future of the identity ecosystem and your role in it in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. I think identity is very core, to financial transactional services in Nigeria. To offer goods, credit service, to offer payment services, you actually need to identify individuals that are participating in it, which is why, we have a lot of regulation around authentication, enforcing two-factor authentication and all that. We are moving to a point where individuals can actually use their biometric for authentication and authorization of transactions. And the BVN has also provided an infrastructure to uniquely identify each individual customer within the ecosystem. Now, given the GSI that we have also released recently, it also creates the impetus for people who offer credit services to leverage on such rules and policies, to be able to provide those services. Because right now, you can actually, in terms of recovery, you can actually see your customers, account holding in all the banks together. So you can't hide anymore. You're owing one bank A and you have money in bank B. The system can actually prompt you up to say that you have money in those accounts. And then with the National Collateral Registry, it also gives us a legal impetus to use movable assets, as collateral to take loans. So I think the entire infrastructure that is needed for this kind of services is ready, and I encourage all financial service providers to leverage on this regulatory environment and provide services to Nigerians.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for these words. I want to go to Mr. Ikharo. Mr. Ikharo, what, in your perspective, what's the most exciting thing that you will be doing in the next year related to identity?
Well, the most exciting thing is the fact that we have all these our state insurance agencies are now coming on board to be helping to do the capturing. So integrating with NIMC, integrating our enrollment database with NIMC, and also now aggregating enrollment from various state insurance agencies is one big fund that I believe will bring robustness to the identity drive in the country, really. So it's a great opportunity for us at NHIS using the national ID, especially when it relates to access to social services, health being one of those key social services that the citizens have to access. And government is saying that in order for you to access the social services, you need a NIN. You need to be identified uniquely. So for us, it's a no-brainer. It's a must that we must, drive towards using the NIN to demand access to care.
Excellent, excellent. Hadija, your turn and your question. It's a wonderful ecosystem with many partners. As we've seen today, we had a hard time even fitting everybody in. I mean, it's a very rich ecosystem with too many players. I mean, it's proportional to the country. You're the largest population. What do you think? How will you work together moving forward? What kind of bodies of coordination on a permanent basis do you think should be there? What kind of frameworks to make sure that you are able to work together in a harmonized way?
Okay, thank you. I think we are already getting there because we need a political will, which has already been provided by government to ensure that the agencies work together. We might have been slow in getting to where we are today, but all agencies, all stakeholders are in agreement that there's a need for identity, digital identity in the country. And by the time the NIMC populates the national ID database, the explosion of services across the different sectors will be enormous. So what should we be looking forward to? Looking forward to making sure that while we have a robust national identity database that can provide that identity service, to make sure that access to that database, secure access, is made available to all agencies. And because once you have secure access and other stakeholders have confidence in the quality and accuracy of the data in the national identity database, I believe the drive to have individual databases will reduce. There might be sectors that would definitely need their functional databases coexisting with the foundation data. But for smaller businesses and other sectors outside the major key stakeholders, the dependence on the national identity database will be key.
Will be key.
So, yeah.
But how will you work together in terms of, I mean, I've seen that the government has put together a steering committee. Do you have a technical committee where all of you are represented?
Yes, there's a technical working group under the ecosystem that is working with all representatives of the stakeholder agencies in public and the private sector, and also membership from other interest group outside the former public sector, private sector, sorry. So the working groups are there. Likewise, the legal reform working group to make sure that the different legislations are harmonized to make sure that they are in sync with the government policy on digital economy. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to go to Grace. Grace, I want to raise with you a subject which may be in the future happening in Nigeria, which is the portability of the funds that a person might have in your pension scheme. I assume that in the pension scheme, there are multiple banks that are authorized to invest the money of the pensioner, and that the person can move the funds and choose whoever they want to do this. Mexico has done that under a reform 5 years ago, which was very successful, which is allowed. There was a fraud because when people were moving the funds, because there was no identifier, there was leakage and there were theft, etc. Is portability of the funds something you would look to establish to allow people to move their funds around? And will the identifier NIN become a critical element in enabling this objective?
Yes, Dr. Atick, thank you very much, because that question speaks to the issues which are currently on the front burner in the pension industry. Right from the inception of the system, the contributory pension system, that portability was a key feature. But unfortunately, the issue of data integrity has deterred us this far from making or allowing that portability. And just beginning from late last year, we actually started putting the framework and the structures for that portability. I'm happy to inform you now that before the end of this year, we would be done with that arrangement, and RSA holders would be able to move from one pension fund administrator to the other pension fund administrator. So like you have said, yes, the unique identification of individuals therefore becomes very crucial in such portability. For us, we want to know or want to be sure that it's a bona fide owner of the retirement savings account that is initiating such movement from one pension fund administrator to the other, because of the fact of, because of the involvement of that individual's life savings.
Yeah.
So what we have done is we are factoring in a verification of that individual. Of course, a standard base is that every registered member in the contributory pension scheme already has a name. So for you to be a registered member, you would have had a name. But we're not stopping at that. We want to make sure that the individual who has that name is really the person who initiates such portability.
Exactly.
So bringing in a live fingerprint verification.
Bravo. Exactly right.
Of initiating such transfer, the individual will give a live fingerprint, and within seconds, it hits NIMC database and we get a response. So, and already we are linked with NIMC to carry out such verifications.
Excellent. Here's a value proposition that the public will appreciate. So bravo, moving in the right direction. Sorry for being rushed because we're lack of time. I want to go to Adegoke from Paradigm. Adegoke, how do we change the dialogue between civil society and the government ecosystem from being an adversarial and suspicious of each other to being one where both are sitting at the table in total transparency and talking about what the issues are? How do you see the role of civil society changing over the next couple of years as you look at what the measures that have been put in place by this ecosystem and the legal framework, etc.?
Thank you, Joseph. So I think in terms of how each stakeholder sees, one another, it has nothing to do with digital ID system. I think it's just a general thing whereby there is trust issues between government and civil society. But I think that, what I always say is that at the heart of this disagreement is the love for our country. So even when we disagree, there is something that is sitting at the heart of all of that. Everybody wants a better country for our children, for us and all of that. So there are many opportunities for engagement and within the Nigerian context. For example, like Madam Adiza said the other time, we had instituted a court case against NIMC, but we have moved from that to even sitting down with NIMC. In a couple of meetings, we've hosted the Director General of NIMC in a civil society webinar where he took questions directly from civil society stakeholders. But what I think is important is that we must see an open and inclusive process as a natural part of our mode of operation, whereby we create an opportunity for us to benefit from the expertise, the perspective that exists outside of the stakeholder group that we belong to. I think why we always have all these disagreements is because we see things from our own perspective alone, and we think the other person is just making noise. So the government sees stakeholders as adversarial, as noisemakers. The stakeholders see government as wicked. The civil society see government as corrupt, wicked, and all of that. But then it takes talking to one another more and more to be able to understand the perspective of each stakeholder. And the only way we can achieve that is to create an open and inclusive process that is transparent and that's also embedded with the principle of accountability. So if there is one word I want to say, or a last or parting statement, is to say that to encourage both the steering committee, the National Identity Management Commission, and all the agencies that are involved in this process to make their processes a lot more open, more inclusive, more transparent for engagement from civil society and other actors who want to be part of the process, who can add a lot of value. And one value that we will add, for example, which I'm going to say on this call is, for example, as long as the process is open enough for us to have access to all the information we need, we'll be conducting independent assessment from human rights perspective, from risk factor perspective, so that we can be able to provide useful feedback that can help make the process better. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I want to go to the Premier very quickly. Premier, what is the roadmap for payments? Are we going to see mobile payments picking up in Nigeria and becoming a preferred method for people to conduct their transactions?
Certainly, because if you look at the statistics, more people with mobile phones, there are large numbers of Nigerians with mobile phones, but data still remains a major issue. That's why we are looking at the mobile, certainly as a means, as well as other methodology for payment. So working with the central bank, there's a whole lot being built around that space to make things work more offline, and then get those who are in the rural areas to be able to transact and do business without being online. So you're going to see a lot of more product design around the mobile money, as well as other offline methodology of making payments.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Actually, Mrs. Odobo, I hope the connection is working. I've got a quick question for you. Okay. What is your target for new birth registrations over the next 2 years? Where do you want to be? Where are you today and where do you want to be?
Okay, thank you so much. Currently, we are at 43% now. What we are looking at in the next 2 years, 3 years, we're looking at moving at least 60% coverage, if not more than that. But we are looking at having an achievable target. At least if we can, in the next 2-3 years, we hit up to 60%. That will make a lot of impact. And as we are trying to move out of the analog registration into the ICT digital capturing, so that birth registration being the foundation identity, because all this we are talking and we are cut off from the ecosystem for now. It is not a good thing, but we are envisaging that in the future, when as we have launched, we are moving forward, we are envisaging a situation where we will link to NIMC so that its identity management will make meaning, where you start from birth and then terminate at death. So that is the situation now, and that is what the Commission is focusing on, digitalizing the whole system so that we can move forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chidi, this is not specific to Nigeria. I'm asking you this question as an expert who's been in the identity management for electoral reasons in democracy. What is your view about the contribution of biometrics into the democratic process in Africa in general? Do you think biometric registration has led to stabilizing electoral systems and having the acceptance that there's a legitimate result, or do you think it was just could have been done by some other means? Is biometrics essential for democracy in Africa?
Thank you, Doc. The problem we in Africa have is trust issues. And therefore, if you don't trust any person, what you need to do is to remove manual manipulations. Ghana and Nigeria did biometrics using OMR form as far back as 2002 and 2003. And the Ghana election got better. But you see, in an election, there are 3 arms of major processes, which means voter registration. You now have to authenticate the person because of, this is Africa, we don't have a lot, you don't have the infrastructure. So the person comes, are you sure that the person that comes to the field is the person? So you need to do authentication and verify. And then this is another where they have this problem. And then how do you now transmit your result so that the result that happened at the polling unit becomes what is announced? So we've been doing this. And I can tell you in Africa, in Namibia, South Africa, Nigeria, we have been improving. I can tell you biometrics is key, very, very key. And I hope after we have done this revalidation with NIMC, we will solve the very major issue of not only having a card, but that card must be you when you come to the polling unit. And if it says no, you can't vote. Right now, we try to manage it because of backlash. But once we finish with NIMC, you come with your card, and it did not identify, you cannot vote. So in summary, biometrics have helped third world countries, including Africa, in the election. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that insight. Now I'm back to my friend, DJ Aziz. DJ Aziz, how do you sleep at night?
Well, I do sleep at night, but you ask me what keeps me awake. So usually I'll take any kind of book to try to read, but actually what is at the back of my mind is, when are we going to start this ecosystem approach, whereby all the public sector and private sector people are capturing this data and issuing the digital identity. So that is what keeps me awake all night. But I would like to thank you specifically, Dr. Joseph, because you have made it very, very easy for us and the entire ID for Africa team. And also to thank the World Bank, AFD, and EIB, and also all the entire ID4D team that is in Washington for making this possible. And now back home, our champion, Mr. President, and also the chairman of our steering committee, Mr. Boss Mustafa, and also our new minister and champion, Dr. Pantami, and all the other stakeholders that have worked on this ecosystem before this time and now. Now we can really see that we are ready, and we look forward to commencing this process. And I believe that in not 3 to 5 years, but maybe 2 to 3 years, we will be able to capture everybody. And that is when we can see the power of the digital identity in changing all what we have been doing. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you. On behalf of the movement, I will say we are with you all the way. ID for Africa will continue to accompany you like we've done for the last 6 years. We'll continue all the way to success. My only plea, I plead with everybody from the sector, from the foundational identity, to adopt exclusion risk assessments, which is a concept that we raised last week in our inclusion session, basically saying that our goal ultimately is to make the invisibles visible and to leave no one behind. Our commitment has to be that identity is a very, very essential. It's not just a right, it's an essential ingredient in somebody's life. And we can make a difference in people's lives. We can answer the critics by showing the positive impact of identity done responsibly. I was honored today to be with you. I will apologize for the number of questions that have come in. The time is just not on our side to be able to answer all these questions. Clearly, we're gonna have many other sessions coming in the future, but the fact that you stayed with us 2.5 hours and we still have the energy to keep going is a testament of the passion and the important mission that we have to accomplish all working together. So thank you very much. Thank you for all the participants. I know many will be watching this in replay on YouTube because it's difficult to see everybody staying for 2.5 hours. That's why we have the recording. So thank you so much. And I'll say stay safe and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Messi. That's nice.